Good evening. On World News tonight, tanker seizure. The United States has seized 2 tankers linked to Venezuelan oil exports. Scam alert. Cambodia has extradited a Chinese billionaire accused of orchestrating a massive global cryptocurrency scam. Engagement disaster. Man drops engagement ring from a 120-foot height, yet was lucky enough to find it again. Good evening. Thank you for joining World News Tonight on Derana News channel. I'm Pratika Sivakumar, and we start with the United States says it has seized 2 tankers linked to Venezuelan oil exports in back-to-back operations in the North Atlantic and Caribbean. The Russian flagged Marinera after a pursuit lasting almost 2 weeks, and a second tanker, the MOT Sofia, which was accused by the US of conducting illicit activities and boarded in the Caribbean.
The Trump administration says it's moving to assert control over Venezuela's oil sector following the removal of former President Nicolas Maduro in a U.S. military operation earlier this month. On Wednesday, U.S. officials confirmed the seizure of 2 oil tankers linked to Venezuelan petroleum exports. One vessel sailing under a Russian flag was boarded in the North Atlantic after nearly 2 weeks of pursuit as it traveled between Iceland and Scotland. A second tanker was boarded in the Caribbean, with U.S. authorities accusing it of conducting illicit oil transport activities. U.S. officials say the seizures are part of a broader effort to enforce sanctions and prevent unauthorized exports of Venezuelan crude. At the same time, the administration announced plans to relax certain sanctions in order to place Venezuelan oil sales under U.S. oversight. With this, however, the U.S. Energy Department says that going forward, oil transported in and out of Venezuela will only be allowed through channels approved by Washington and consistent with U.S. law and national security policy. While an existing oil embargo remains in place, the administration says it intends to manage how Venezuelan oil is sold on global markets. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said oil seized from the 2 tankers could be included in an agreement announced earlier this week, under which Venezuela would provide up to 50 million barrels of oil to the U.S. The oil would then be sold under U.S. supervision. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt said the rollback of some sanctions is intended to give Washington greater control of Venezuelan oil revenues following Maduro's removal.
So the U.S. is selectively rolling back sanctions to enable the transport and the sale of Venezuelan crude and oil products to the global markets.
She stressed that the U.S. control of the Venezuelan oil will prevent funds from being diverted through illicit networks.
US President Donald Trump, whose renewed threats to seize Greenland from NATO member Denmark have rattled the transatlantic alliance, said he doubted allies would be there for us if we really needed them.
There likely won't be boots on the ground in Greenland, according to U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson. After White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said military action in the semi-autonomous territory was on the table, Johnson dismissed the statement Wednesday.
I don't think anybody's talking about using military force in Greenland. They're looking at diplomatic channels on all.
The White House said they're keeping military options there open.
The U.S. always has military options for everything.
The White House has since said that diplomacy is its first option, though it is open to all others. President Donald Trump also appears to be contradicting himself. Despite threats to take over Greenland, a NATO ally, he affirmed lasting U.S. support for the military alliance in a Truth Social post Wednesday.
I doubt NATO will be there for us if we really need them. We will always be there for NATO, even if they won't be there for us.
Greenland falls under the protection of NATO since its defense and foreign policy remain in the hands of Denmark, a member of the alliance. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has cautioned that Trump taking over the territory will bring an end to NATO. Danish officials are set to meet next week for talks with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who recently said Trump plans to buy Greenland rather than invade the island.
I'll be meeting with them next week. We'll have those conversations with them then.
Does the U.S. intend to buy Greenland? Can you clarify your comments to lawmakers this week?
Well, that's always been the president's intent from the very beginning. He said it very early on. I mean, this is not new. He talked about it in his first term.
The plan to buy Greenland has already been strongly rejected by politicians in both Greenland and Denmark, who say the territory is not for sale.
President Lee Jae-myung is on his way back to the country after wrapping up a 4-day state visit to China. He held a press briefing this afternoon with the presidential press corps on the last day.
A trip with even more progress than anticipated. That's how President Lee Jae-myung described his 4-day state visit to China during a surprise press conference on Wednesday. High on the agenda was North Korea. President Lee said peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula were among the key issues discussed in depth with President Xi Jinping. President Xi responded that Beijing would make efforts in that direction, but stressed the need for patience, given how hostile inter-Korean relations have become in recent years. For a nuclear-free Korean peninsula, Lee mentioned he asked China to help convey his message that a more realistic approach would be to first stop Pyongyang's nuclear program development in exchange for corresponding measures. When asked whether he sees signs of improvement in China's unofficial restrictions on Korean cultural content, including K-dramas and K-pop, the president answered that there was a clear expression of intent. He added that he emphasized the importance of easing such restrictions to address growing anti-China sentiment in South Korea. Regarding China's installation of large structures, including aquaculture facilities, in Seoul and Beijing's jointly managed maritime area in the West Sea, working-level talks will begin to clarify where the boundary is in the shared zone.
Cambodia says it has extradited to China a billionaire businessman accused of masterminding a vast cryptocurrency scam in which traffic workers were lured to forced labor camps to defraud victims globally.
Shen Chi, a powerful and controversial tycoon, is now at the center of one of the biggest transnational fraud cases in recent history. Cambodian authorities confirmed that Chen Chi was among the 3 Chinese nationals arrested on January 6th, following a joint investigation into organized cross-border crime that lasted several months. The other 2 suspects, identified as Xu Jilang and Shao Chi Hui, all 3 have since been extradited to China, though officials have not disclosed where Chen was detained. Last October, the United States charged the 37-year-old with fraud and money laundering, accusing him of running massive online scam operations from Cambodia that allegedly stole billions of dollars in cryptocurrency. Authorities later seized nearly $15 billion worth of Bitcoin believed to be linked to Chen, calling it one of the largest financial fraud crackdowns ever recorded. The United Kingdom also imposed sanctions on Chen's global business network, the Prince Group. Cambodian regulators have since suspended Prince Bank, a subsidiary of the group, placing it under liquidation while allowing customers to withdraw funds and repay loans. Shen Chi, who became a Cambodian citizen in 2014 after giving up his Chinese nationality, had his Cambodian citizenship revoked last month. The Prince Group has previously denied involvement in scam operations, saying it operates in property, finance, and consumer services. However, Chinese authorities have been investigating the group since last 2020, describing it as a major transnational online gambling and fraud syndicate. The case has once again highlighted the scale of scam networks in Southeast Asia, where hundreds of thousands of people are believed to be trafficked and forced to operate online fraud schemes under the threat and abuse. Experts say it is the sheer scale of Shen Chi's alleged operations that makes this case stand out, raising serious questions about how such networks were able to operate for years without intervention.
There were violent clashes between anti-government protesters and security forces in several locations in Iran yesterday, as a wave of unrest sparked by the country's economic crisis continued for an 11th day.
Violent clashes have erupted between anti-government protesters and security forces across Iran. A nationwide unrest entered its 11th day. Iranian media reported that 2 police officers were shot dead in the southwestern town of Lodegan on Wednesday, during protests that have spread rapidly across the country. Authorities say the officers were killed by armed individuals among the demonstrators. Videos circulating on social media showed tense standoffs between protesters and security forces, with gunfire and tear gas heard in several locations. In multiple cities, security forces appear to fire live rounds and gas to disperse crowds, while protesters are seen throwing stones. Rights groups say demonstrations have now taken place in at least 111 cities and towns across all 31 provinces. According to activists, at least 34 protesters and 4 members of the security forces have been killed, with more than 2,000 arrests reported. Iranian officials have confirmed the deaths of several security personnel. The protests began on December 28 after shopkeepers in Tehran took to the streets over the sharp collapse of the Iranian rial. Inflation has surged to around 40% as sanctions linked to Iran's nuclear program combined with long-standing economic mismanagement and corruption. University students soon joined the demonstrations, which quickly turned political. Protesters have been heard chanting slogans against Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and in some cases voicing support for exiled former royal family. Clashes have been reported in multiple cities, with footage showing security forces retreating in some areas. Iranian officials say peaceful protesters will not face security measures, but warn that what they call rioters will be prosecuted swiftly. The unrest is now the most widespread since the deadly protest of 2022, raising fresh concerns about stability in the country.
Let's go in for a short commercial break. More world news coming right after this. Welcome back. Days after issuing threats of military action against Colombia, U.S. President Donald Trump said he had invited Colombian President Gustavo Petro to the White House following what was described as a cordial phone conversation.
In Bolivar Square, in the heart of Bogotá, protesters were calling for respect for Colombian sovereignty. The country's president, Gustavo Petro, himself called for the demonstration, following his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump threatening military intervention in the country. Arriving late to the protest, Petro announced that he had just been on the phone with Trump.
Today we spoke on the phone for the first time since he became president. If we don't have dialogue, then there is war.
Moments later, he discovered and read live a message Trump posted on Truth Social, inviting him to the White House.
I appreciated his call and his tone, and I look forward to meeting him soon.
The crowd responded with resounding applause. After months of trading barbs on social media, the tone between the two leaders reached a fever pitch after the U.S. operation that abducted Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro, which Petro decried as illegal. Trump responded by telling him to watch his back and called him an international drug dealer. Explaining the accusations, the Colombian head of state said that the extreme right in his country had the U.S. president's ear.
Trump isn't stupid. They deceived him. That's why he came out saying something that would sound absurd to any citizen who hears it, that Petro is the head of drug trafficking, when they've tried to assassinate me 4 times.
Colombia has long been among America's staunchest allies in Latin America and a pillar of Washington's counter-narcotic strategy abroad. But relations have deteriorated in recent months, with Petro being a vocal critic of Trump's foreign policies. In September, the U.S. added Colombia to a list of nations that are failing to cooperate in the drug war for the first time in 30 years.
The leader of Yemen's southern separatists failed to board a flight to Riyadh for crisis talks, adding uncertainty to efforts to contain a military escalation that has caused a major rift between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates.
Yemen's Saudi-backed Presidential Council said on Wednesday it was pushing for high treason charges against southern separatist leader Aidarus al-Zubaydi, accusing him of inciting armed rebellion. It comes after Zubaydi skipped a flight to the Saudi capital Riyadh for talks aimed at resolving a crisis in Yemen that has triggered a major feud between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, the two most powerful countries in the oil-rich Gulf. Hours after his unexplained absence, Zubaydi's group, the Southern Transitional Council, or STC, said their leader was in Yemen's port city of Aden, overseeing military and security operations. An STC official told Zubaydi had not fled, but that he did not go to Riyadh due to security concerns. Saudi-backed Yemeni government forces, meanwhile, were advancing towards Aden, Saudi state TV reported, without giving details. Saudi Arabia and the UAE first intervened in Yemen more than a decade ago after Iran-aligned Houthis seized the Yemeni capital of Sana'a in 2014. The UAE had then joined a Saudi-backed coalition to support the internationally recognized Yemeni government. The STC, set up in 2017 with UAE backing, ultimately joined the government coalition. But last month, STC forces suddenly seized swaths of territory, pitting the two Gulf powers and US allies against each other. On Wednesday, the Saudi-backed coalition accused Zubaydi of distributing arms in Aden in a bid to stir unrest. It also said there were signs that Zubaydi had moved large forces during the 3 hours his Riyadh-bound plane waited for him. The coalition said it has appointed Zubaydi's deputy, Abu Zara, to take charge of security in Aden, an indication of his warming ties with Saudi Arabia. A senior STC official later posted on X confirming that he and his colleagues had arrived in Riyadh and that the talks would go ahead, quote, in a positive atmosphere.
The Ukrainian and US delegations held another round of consultations in Paris to discuss an end to the almost 4-year-old conflict between Ukraine and Russia.
It was a third meeting within 2 days between the Ukrainian and US representatives in Paris. Rustam Umerov, head of Ukrainian negotiating delegations and secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, said on Wednesday that he had engaged in this round of talks with US envoy Steve Witkoff and President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. The talks centered on key issues concerning the basic framework for ending the war, with particular attention to possible forms of future engagement between the leaders of Ukraine, European partners, and United States. During the visit to Cyprus on Wednesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that talks with Western allies have reached a new level. Zelensky said that Ukraine, along with its European partners, the United States, and all participants in the coalition, are willing and working together towards a resolution. He also suggested that the talks will reach a significant milestone within the first half of 2026, when Cyprus is holding the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union.
After immense pressure, the Prime Minister has ordered a royal commission into the Bondi tragedy. It marks a significant shift for Anthony Albanese, who had previously rejected the need for a federal probe on multiple occasions.
Walking head-on into an about-face, the Prime Minister commits Australia's highest level of investigation into the Bondi massacre.
It's clear to me that a royal commission is essential to achieving this.
The Commonwealth Royal Commission will be led by former High Court Judge Virginia Bell. The focus, tackling anti-Semitism and investigating key drivers, improving law and immigration enforcement, examining the circumstances surrounding the Bondi attack, and any other recommendations to help social cohesion and prevent radical religious extremism.
It does reflect the seriousness of the growth in anti-Semitism and its impact on our country and our democracy.
Ministers of the Crown need to be effectively in the dock.
The choice of Ms Bell, who has ruled in favour of free speech and overturned anti-protest laws criticised preemptively by prominent Jewish leaders. Former Treasurer Josh Frydenberg tweeting, the Prime Minister has been told directly by leaders of the Jewish community that they have serious concerns about the appointment.
One of the most common themes that I get from members of the Jewish community is that if you've got 4 people, you'll have 5 opinions. There were multiple opinions.
It's been 3.5 weeks since the terror attack targeting Jewish Australians that killed 15 and injured 39 at Hanukkah by the Sea in Bondi. Naveem Akram charged with 59 offences. His father Sajid shot dead. Calls from the Jewish community for a royal commission into anti-Semitism began shortly after.
We here deserve answers. We don't need pious words of comfort.
The government rejecting that idea.
Is it the right way to deal with national security? The answer is no. Is it the right way to deliver unity? The answer again is no.
But now, after passionate pleas from victims' families and a sustained campaign from business, religious and sporting leaders, a royal commission will go ahead.
Royal commissions are complex undertakings, and of course it will take some time.
This report will be faster, due back before the anniversary of the attack in December this year.
The attack on December 14 targeted Jewish Australians, but it also targeted the Australian way of life.
A U.S. immigration agent shot and killed a 37-year-old woman in her car in Minneapolis amid an immigration enforcement search. According to officials, this is the latest violent incident during Trump's nationwide crackdown on migrants.
An immigration enforcement surge in Minneapolis turned deadly on Wednesday when a U.S. immigration agent shot and killed a 37-year-old woman in her car. This video showing the moment of the shooting. In another video, a bloody airbag is seen in the shooting's aftermath. It was the latest violent incident during President Donald Trump's nationwide crackdown on migrants. And Minnesota Governor Tim Walz blasted the Trump administration for the shooting.
What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. It's governing by reality TV. And today that recklessness cost someone their life.
In a social media post, Trump said the video showed the woman, quote, violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense. The video does not show that the vehicle, quote, ran over the ICE officer. U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem echoed Trump's characterization of the incident.
It was an act of domestic terrorism. What happened was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle. An officer of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him.
We've dreaded this moment.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey adamantly rejected the Trump administration's claim that the agent fired in self-defense. Frey said he had seen the video of the shooting that directly contradicts what he called the government's, quote, garbage narrative.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, this was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying.
He said federal immigration agents were responsible for sowing chaos in the city, and he had a strong message for them.
To ICE, we do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite.
The city's police chief said an initial investigation indicated the woman's vehicle was blocking traffic when a federal officer approached on foot, adding the woman was not a target of immigration operations. The shooting drew protesters into the streets near the scene, some of whom were met by heavily armed federal agents wearing gas masks who fired chemical irritants at the demonstrators.
Time for a short break now. We'll be right back with more world news. Welcome back. It's the dream engagement moment, but things take a turn when Trevor Van Camp dropped the diamond ring from the lighted sky bridge at Boyne Mountain Ski Resort in Michigan. It was a 120-foot drop, but Patrick Harper came in for the rescue.
A guy poses for a photo with his girlfriend.
Okay.
Then he gets down on bended knee and pops the question. She gleefully nods her head yes, but as her fiance pulls out the diamond sparkler to put it on her finger, disaster!
You just dropped it!
The reaction on his face says it all.
I was just in complete shock.
Trevor Van Camp had been planning on proposing to his girlfriend Danielle for a month and a half. He knew the lighted sky bridge at Boyne Mountain Ski Resort in Michigan was the picture-perfect spot.
I didn't even get to see the ring before it fell. I was in utter shock, but it is a Trevor thing to do. Trevor is a klutz. You know, it was a long way down.
You can say that again. It's a 120-foot drop.
We went and searched for about 2.5 hours after I dropped it. I'm like, we are never ever gonna find this thing.
That's where this guy comes in, Patrick Harper, the midnight snow-making supervisor. He heard about the ring drop, so he grabbed his trusty metal detector and at 4:30 a.m. hit pay dirt.
I was kind of stunned a little bit. I sat there for a little bit and just kind of looked around and looked back at the ring. It was an unreal moment.
The following morning, Danielle finally got to put on her engagement ring.
I was ecstatic. It was as perfect as when Trevor picked it up.
At the end of a season, what better way to move on than feast on it? Alison Hall tells us the best way to dispose Christmas trees is to feed the goats at Cropsey Farms in New City, New York.
It's truly a win-win situation. You need to get rid of your Christmas tree, and these goats are really hungry. They eat all of the pine needles right down to the bark of the tree. On average, each goat eats 1 Christmas tree a day. For these goats, it's beginning to taste a lot like Christmas. Of course, there are other ways to dispose of your Christmas tree, and a lot more convenient than finding a goat farm. Lots of municipalities have drop-off areas for recycling. It makes for great mulch for your garden. Depending on where you live, you can put your tree on the curb and the sanitation department will take it away. But if you're one of those super fans of Christmas who can't seem to part with your tree, you are not alone. Even the reigning queen of Christmas, Mariah Carey, wants a little more time.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hopes of seeing you again, I'm Pritika Sivakumar, and we'll leave you tonight with the visuals of Pompadours to Priscilla's and Elvis fans descending on Australia's parks for annual festival. Also, don't forget to send us your feedback through email at feedback.adnceenglish@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076-805-7933. Thank you for watching World News Tonight on Other Derana News channel. Have a good night.